going to start this video with an apology. I should have done it a little bit earlier, but hopefully what I do now will be helpful to you. It's about furlough and the change to the furlough scheme running up to the end of October. It's a good idea, I think, to aid understanding, to break it down into its months, June, July, August, September and October, when, as things stand, the furlough scheme will come to an end, which is why there's so much worry about what unemployment will look like by that point. Okay, let's go back to June. What happens for the rest of this month? Nothing. The scheme remains exactly as it is and has been. So the employer can claim back 80% of the employee's salary up to 2,500, and the employer must pay at least 80% of the employee's salary up to 2,500. So no change. The employer can also claim back the employer's national insurance and an amount equal to the minimum auto-enrollment contribution. Get to July. Still no change to those numbers, the amount that gets paid out to the employee, the amount that can be reclaimed by the employer in principle. However, the principle of flexible furloughing comes in. One of the conditions for furlough up until the end of June is that when you're furloughed for that minimum 3-week period, you can do no work for the employer at all, for that employer. However, from the 1st of July, you can do some work. So it's aligned with the getting back of the economy. We're having a system whereby you can flexibly furlough. So that means for some of the week, you could come back and do some work and then do no work for the rest of the week, part-time working basically. For the period when you do work, the employer must pay you, in accordance with your contract of employment, 100% of your salary that you're entitled to, broken down proportionately by reference of the period that you do work. They can then claim the furlough part, the reclaim, up to 80% of the proportion of the salary related to the time when you are not working, okay? And that will be reflected in the payment that is made to you. Then we get to August. So what changes there? Well, flexible furloughing continues, but what changes there is that the employer can no longer reclaim employer's national insurance and can no longer reclaim an amount equivalent to the auto-enrollment contribution refund. Okay, so that's the only thing that changes. Everything else stays the same, flexible furloughing and 80% subject to 2,500, both on the reclaim and payout. Then we get to September. There's a more material change, a gradual stepping down of what the employer can claim back. And the stepping down is in relation to the percentage. You'll remember up until that point, 80%, now 70% from the 1st of September. So the employer can claim back 70% of the furloughed employee's salary for the furlough period. So what about the employee? The employee must still get 80%. So that means the employer is contributing 10%, as it were, towards the payment up to a maximum of 2,500. Just to put a number on that, so for the September figure, that means the maximum amount that can be reclaimed per employee by an employer is 70% of 2,500. So effectively 2,187 is what the employer can reclaim. 2,187 is the maximum reclaim they can make back, and that means they could have to contribute, the maximum they could contribute to the employee's payment is £313, because 313 plus 2,187 equals 2,500. So that's the maximum contribution that the employer makes. The employee must get the same amount, minimum 80%, up to 2,500. Then we get to October, and it's the same principle, only a slightly bigger discount. So for October, the employee must still get 80%, up to £2,500, but the employer can only reclaim 60%, which means the max, subject to a maximum of, the new maximum, 1,875, not 2,500, £1,875. The employee must still get 80% of their salary up to a maximum of 2,500. So at the maximum point, the employer would have to contribute another £625. 1,875 plus 625 equals the 2,500. So what we see is a gradual increase through August, September and October of the amount that the employer will need to contribute towards the furlough payment that is received by the employee. All the tax consequences are exactly the same as they have been and will be through to the end of the scheme. And then the question arises, well, what happens at the end of October? Well, as it stands, it ends. The scheme ends, abrupt stop. And there's been nothing stated by the Chancellor to the contrary. What we do know, though, is that they will be keeping a very close eye on those unemployment figures and what employers are doing about that. And what we also know is that in Europe, we have seen moves to continue whatever version they have in these two countries, France and Germany, where they have said very clearly that they will be continuing some form of top up to employment payments because they see the benefit in that. They say, look, basically, if we've got a pot of money that we have to spend on unemployment payments, or if that money could be deployed by paying it to an employer, and as a result of that, they keep an employee in work, that must be a better use of the money. The throwaway that I'm going to give you is, in Germany, that's called Kurzarbeit. There you are. Not a lot of people know that. So whether we continue to do something like that remains open. At the moment, there's been nothing said that would indicate that we are, but you would think, given that this is a major issue for the government to continue, consider. Remember, we've had almost 9 million employees who have benefited from the furlough scheme. So it's basically done its job. 1 million employers, and over £15 billion has been used to maintain that scheme. So it definitely is a watch that space. Will we get an emergency budget that will tell us what's going to happen in the future, or whether we're going to see an extension? I doubt we'll have a full-blown emergency budget, but we will almost certainly have a continual sort of set of announcements made that represent a form of stimulus for the economy, and maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, something more done to extend some form of furloughing or assistance for those where the employer would keep them on but needs a bit of help. Let's hope, let's hope. We'll be keeping up to date with all of this as ever through Techlink.